Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Full Circle. We've got another episode looking at some of the big tournaments going on in the fall. As always, every year, OS has a lot of big tournaments in this season. First and foremost, the OS World Cup. But we're also going to take a look at MGC Grand Finals real quick. I am Dio. I'm going to be coordinating the episode alongside this one guy, and iFlame to start us off with the first couple of matches that we want to go over.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning indeed.
All right, we got a
It's
lot of
2
content
p.m.
this
That's morning.
episode. Yeah, it's a little bit past morning. It's 2 p.m. We got a lot of content this episode, so let's quickly get started with Great Britain versus Turkey, or the UK versus Turkey, abbreviated as GB. Unfortunately, no clip for this episode because it was not live streamed on the OSU Live channel or OSU Live 2. There were 3 matches going on at the time, but this was a 5-3 win for the UK while missing both Akalibed and Easy Champ.
Okay, I have to back myself up here because I thought we were doing MGC first, so now I have to go to my other tab here.
You are completely right. I am trolling. Let's start with MGC real quick.
All right.
Losers bracket.
Right.
Yeah, a little ahead of myself here. I was like ready to go on to the OWC stuff. I had my sheet
man.
up on the side and everything. VexA versus Enry. Expectations for that match were for Enry to outperform on the higher star rating pool. VexA ended up performing beyond those expectations and actually winning the match 7-5.
Yeah, I mean, we all counted VexA out, and he proved us all wrong, which was pretty crazy to see and was really impressive. It was a little bit of the return to form, I think, for VexA from the past. I think both players played really well in this one in general. I will say, if it is my personal opinion here, that Enry played a little below expectations. But VexA did exactly what he needed to do to win this match, and it was really, really impressive to see some of the scores that he was able to put up, getting back to the big stage for the first time in quite a while.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree. VexA did, of course, play insanely well to match so many of Enry's scores and beat him, of course, on 7, but it was insanely close. You look at the actual scores on some of these maps, losing the DT1 by 30k, losing the Hard Rock 4 by 4k. Now, he did win the Hidden 3 by 17k, so got one back there, but it was a little bit unlucky, just in the sense that give it, another 100 combo somewhere in there for Enry, and it very easily could have gone to tiebreaker, which I would predict Enry to win, but I also predicted him to win this match. VexA won it instead, so who knows how that one would have gone, but it was insanely close either way. VexA has definitely played impressively well, coming back to tournaments relatively recently, and already up to second place is impressive stuff.
Yeah. It was a really, really good performance from VexA. I think a big turning point in this match was this map that's playing right now, the Hidden 3. This was Enry's pick, and VexA ended up winning this match. It was this map, it was a break point, and after that, it was kind of all downhill from there for Enry. He was really unable to get the same kind of foothold back in the match as he had before. Let's go. Oh, I am this one guy. This one guy is Sad Shiba, and
and
is Sad
I feel he's
Shiba
also Sad Shiba.
Let's go.
I believe it's also Sad Shiba.
This is so
We have
cool.
double Sad Shiba here. Okay, let's go on to the actual grand finals, which was Maleshevsky versus VexA. Given that we predicted Maleshevsky to win versus Enry, I think most people would have also predicted Maleshevsky to win versus VexA, especially given the semifinals result where he already beat VexA in match. And yeah, this match was not close. It was the Maleshevsky show, especially here on the Nomad 2. 7-1 the final score line, and Maleshevsky taking the tournament without bracket reset.
This one was, to me, a very expected result. It was, of course, a lot more one-sided than the previous match between the two of them, but you have to keep in mind that the previous match going 7-5 between VexA and Enry, Maleshevsky is able to take a look at all those scores, and so pretty much every single one of Maleshevsky's picks, he has all the information he needs to know which maps he's advantaged on. Meanwhile, VexA is almost throwing darts at a dartboard and hoping for the best, right? Maleshevsky is just so good at so many skill sets. There was the DT2, the DT3 banned out, wins the HR1, very nearly wins the HR2, and I like the direction VexA was going with the picks early on. But after that, it's really tough. You figure, okay, banned out the DT2, DT3, maybe I just pick into tapping. We'll go for the Nomad 2. I completely agree with that line of logic. The Nomad 2 was a great pick on paper. And then Maleshevsky puts up 600k 2.5K combo on a 9.2 star stream map. And there's
As
just
you
nothing
do.
you can do against
As
that,
one does.
as you do if you're Malashevsky. He is just on another level. And so, really, after that Hard Rock 1, Hard Rock 2 pick, you're kind of just completely guessing if you're VexA at what you hope you can compete with Malashevsky on, whereas Malashevsky has all the information and the picks are just really, really easy to find for Malashevsky. So if it wasn't for, of course, VexA having to reveal all the scores in the previous match, it would have been a little bit closer, but I think it would have been a Malashevsky win either way.
Yeah, I mean, at this point in time, there's literally one person in the world who's capable of beating Malashevsky in 1v1, and his name was on this tournament, right? I mean, mrekk
Yeah.
has proven that he's the only player who can actually semi-reliably out-skill cap Malashevsky. And even then, performing like this for Malashevsky, that match would have been like as close as it could possibly be. As it stands, VexA not quite on that level at this point, and you saw the results. I mean, like you said, there's just nothing that Malashevsky can't do. Anytime it seems like there's a skill set that he might be a little weaker on or falling behind on, he just like seamlessly picks it up and becomes, a top 3 tournament player in whatever that skill set may be. The guy seems pretty unstoppable right now, and this was just another example. And I don't even know if it would have mattered if VexA had 7-0'd Enry the day before and didn't have to give away so much information, because Malashevsky was just better, and I don't think it made a difference what maps they played or how many maps that VexA had shown, because he was just better.
Yeah, this was kind of the turning point in the match, if there ever was one, right? Not for, oh, Malashevsky starts winning from here, but okay, this match is doomed from here, right? You get gapped so hard on a pick like this on a break point, it's really, really hard to come back from that. And with the way Malashevsky was playing up to this point, it was just kind of rough. Yeah, peaked over 2K combo, peaked over 1K performance points for Malashevsky on that map. It was kind of ridiculous. So ended up with the 7-1 there. Malashevsky, outside of mrekk, pretty much uncontested, the best 1v1 tournament player in the game right now, and proved it through, defeating both VexA and Enry multiple times or multiple times for VexA, once for Enry in MGC. On to the World Cup, as we are now finally ready to go on to OWC, and we can start off, as I jumped the gun with a little bit earlier, the UK versus Turkey. Again, it was a 5-3 victory for the UK, so a closer scoreline, I think, than a lot of people would have expected for this match. But the UK was also missing their effectively 2 best players in Akolibed and Easy Champ. I think you can make arguments for Rudge and potentially Bowman on some pools, but so far those 2 have been pretty integral to the team's success.
Yeah, I mean, the big story of this match was basically just that the UK was missing members. I don't think this is 5-3. If they had their full team there, I'm pretty sure they win it something more like 5-1. Like Turkey is a team that is always capable of putting up pretty decent scores in early round. They tend to qualify, they get into top 32, and they might win a point or two against whatever high seed they face. But unfortunately, they just don't have the 4-man roster for picks to be able to win, outright matches. Raikoho plays really, really well every time. Shinkiro tends to play really well, but after that, it drops off a cliff. And UK was just kind of more well-rounded and has a more complete roster that even when missing people, they're still going to have backups that can come in and put up good scores, and that's kind of just how this one went. They did have some close matches, like the Nomad 4 and Hidden, well, technically it's Hidden 1, but it's like, the Air 8. But other than that, yeah, I think just UK, just that little bit better, and that wins you a couple points here and there, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, I mean, 2 missing players for UK. I don't think there's going to be a ton to add with this one. I will say, I do still think Turkey overperformed their seed a little bit. They had some really impressive team scores, especially on that. I think it was the Hard Rock 2 where they got number 2 as a team in the entire tournament. So Turkey has shown some signs of strength, but of course UK is a very good team, and had they had those 2 key players, would have been not nearly as close. But I do think Turkey is going to be a strong team in the losers bracket that you're going to have to watch out for.
Yep. So look out for them. We're going to move on to Hong Kong versus Finland. This was also a 5-3 win from Hong Kong. It was traded picks back and forth until the very last pick for Finland went awry and ended up giving the match to Hong Kong by 1 single break point. Very, very close match between these 2 teams.
Yeah, this one really could have gone either way. It was for Hong Kong, MCY4, who really stepped up, number 6 individual in the tournament. But that's kind of what you come to expect from a player of his caliber, and that is one of the reasons this Hong Kong team is so good. And I will say I'm not super surprised that this one did go to 5-3. It's somewhat expected in the early rounds where the individual players like MCY4 don't have nearly as much of an impact. The maps are a little bit easier. You don't need to be, one of the world's best players to put up really good scores on these maps. And so not surprising to see some of these early seeded matches be really close.
Yeah, this match went pretty much exactly how you would expect. 7 straight picks without a break point, and then Nomad 2 happened, which is a little surprising, I think, actually, because Hong Kong got speed abused on DT2 and DT3, but I guess Finland's luck just kind of ran out on the last pick, and that was all that made the difference. It's kind of surprising to me that this ended the way it did, but like you said, the MCY4 A21 like double FC on this map was the nail in the coffin for Finland, who had kept it really close, really competitive, but I don't want to say they ran out of picks having to go with this Nomad 2, but it just didn't go well for them, and that was all that mattered because that was match point.
I think it would have been a very different sort of match if we had seen Finland pick into something like the Hidden One, for example, with players like Kalanlu on the roster, who are really good at that kind of thing. And I think Hong Kong, while they're a good gimmick team, they don't have the kind of low AR reading roster that you tend to expect of a lot of gimmick teams a lot of times. So I think it could have been a different match if we had seen that pick. But unfortunately, the Nomad 2 just not working out for Finland in the end. And so we move on to the next matchup. That is Chile versus Sweden. This one was also, I think, surprisingly close match for a lot of people. It was 5-3 for Chile over Sweden in this round.
And what makes this even crazier is that Sweden was playing at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Like they kept this close against Chile at 4 a.m. Granted, their best player, or arguably the best player, Reedcat, was playing at a normal time because he was in like Malaysia or something weird like that. But yeah, I think a little bit of overperformance from Sweden definitely acquitted themselves well. Maybe a slight underperformance from Chile at worst, but really, I think the story of this is just Sweden played quite well. There was like a back and forth break point kind of later on in the match. And then Chile just managed to close out the match right afterward. But yeah, this one definitely closer than would have been expected, I think. And shout outs to Sweden for making it a really competitive affair. But then you just get that low AR hidden as the last pick. And that was what allowed Chile to close it out in no 37 with the FC and some decent backing scores on a map that unfortunately Reedcat got 91k on. Not what you need when you're down match point.
Yeah, had the joy of commentating that one, and the 4 a.m. didn't really seem to bother them at all. I was told that their players just have crazy sleep schedules anyways, so they would have been up at that time regardless and didn't mind playing at 4 a.m. But that's still wild, right? Like, even if you're usually up at that time, you're usually half asleep by then. So they performed really well. Of course, Intercambing played incredibly well for Chile was the big carry there, but it was really interesting. Sweden had a lot of variation in their play. They had some really impressive team scores on things like the Nomad 4, getting the top team score tournament wide, but then they had other maps where they were kind of closer to the bottom. So Sweden seems very strong on the skill sets they're good at and very poor on the skill sets they're not quite as good at. But really impressive stuff for them to be able to keep up with Chile and nearly bring it to tiebreaker.
Yep, we'll talk about their matchup later on in the podcast. For now, we move on to the first of 3 different tiebreaker matches to discuss. That is China versus Japan. 16 versus 17 going to tiebreaker that follows the script, right? China does end up winning that match. It was not an upset. It was the higher seed eventually winning out on the tiebreaker, but it was a very, very close tiebreaker with both Crystal and Varvalian full comboing the tiebreaker in that match.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say that tiebreaker was absolutely absurd. I mean, you can't ask for a better ending. Crystal with 8 times 100 FC on the tiebreaker ended up being the top score in the tournament. Absolutely insane. And so it was just a good one. China got off to the early lead. Crystal and Milk Tea played very well. Japan had some really, really impressive team scores on the GT1, the Free Mod one, some of those more aim-focused pick to even things back up. And then, man, tiebreaker was just so good. Not much more to say on that one.
Yeah, we got lucky, man. This tiebreaker was really good in general. All three matches that played it were very, very close. And but shout outs to both teams in this one, right? China played really, really well in the early stages. They were up 4-2. And then Japan, just with the clutch factor, they triple FC'd, or no, double FC'd and almost like came like 20 combo from triple FC'ing Free Mod 1, double FC'd Hard Rock 1 to force the tiebreaker. So really, really clutch stuff from there. Varvalian, Hard Rock FC'ing for the Free Mod, and then FC'ing the Hard Rock 1 as well, alongside Tichy and Rollpan, respectively, for those maps. But man, just a really, really good competitive back and forth match. I think both these teams played about as well as you could expect them to. And, everybody was rewarded in this one, except for, Team Japan, I suppose. But we got a really good match to watch, and it was just very closely fought. And yeah, I mean, Crystal is just like clutch as hell, man. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, you don't see that dude all that much in tournaments in general. He doesn't play a ton of tournaments, it feels like. But when he does, you see him in OWC, he shows up when it counts. And really impressive
it's the
performance.
Clutch factor. It's the clutch factor. Shoutouts also to the three-way FC on DT1 from Japan. Looking forward to their losers bracket run. On to the second tiebreaker match we have, which is Romania versus Singapore. I think a lot of us at Full Circle expected this match to be a little bit closer between these two teams, but we ended up getting a very, very hotly contested match between these two in the early stages. So yeah, let's talk about that one.
Yeah, and conveniently enough, of course, me and iFlame were the ones on the commentary for this one. So nice to have us here. The continuity there is good. This match made so little sense to me, and I don't know if it feels different to you, iFlame, but like the break point for Singapore, and then like the break point back 2 maps later or 3 maps later for Romania, and then they just trade their picks the rest of the way through. You expect, I think, Romania to be a pretty decent mechanics team in this particular matchup, and yet they went like back and forth on mechanics picks. And then another just super, super close tiebreaker. You had Lucrece playing really well in the tiebreaker, Eternum playing really well in the tiebreaker, Rolly playing really well in the tiebreaker, and then Amelia just couldn't quite hold on. You see him break actually right at the beginning of this clip, and that's basically where it was able to flip over, because you had Eternum and Rolly with the late combos, Demonical doing everything he could, but unfortunately just ended up not being quite enough. But again, just a really closely fought match. I mean, both these teams played very, very well, and nobody gave anything up after those early break points. It was just teams winning their own picks and performing very well in another super close tiebreaker.
All right,
That
20 seconds.
also
Any closing words? Any closing words?
Sorry, man.
It was a great one to watch. We'll make it quick. Romania dropped all their combos into the ending of that tiebreaker, but Amelia and just Blank unfortunately could not hold on. Surprisingly enough for Singapore, it was actually Tebby who was the big carry this time around, not Demonical. So well played to them.
Yeah, tiebreaker win by 17K. About as close as it gets.
17K.
On to the third and final tiebreaker match. It is Italy versus New Zealand. This one is one we were expecting to go close, and one of two completely foiled teams against each other. Italy just picking anything that wasn't tapping and was more gimmicky, and New Zealand picking all of the tapping maps and all of the quote-unquote pure mechanics maps in the pool.
Yeah, this one was really interesting. Italy just had a really strong team performance. Saint was their best performer, but looking at the individual performers, it was Chihuahua 47, Kurochi 48, Shadow 49, all right there together in that individual performance metric. Now, despite Italy being the higher seed, it did feel like they were on the back foot for a lot of this match. All of their maps were won by less than 200,000 points. New Zealand had a few 300,000 point wins. I think winning one map by like 400k, another map by 600k. So Italy was very, very close. Maybe one or two more misses to not even making it to the tiebreaker. But they did make it to the tiebreaker. Chihuahua put up 900,000 points, and they were able to make it to the winners bracket finals. Not
Finals?
not the final.
Let's
call it. Let's
a little
call it
ahead of
round of
The
ourselves.
winner's
16.
bracket.
Yeah.
I do think that's kind of how this matchup was always going to go, though. If you are a team that is picking tapping into a team that cannot play tapping, you are always going to win your picks by more than your opponent wins their picks. And that's kind of what happened here. Like, New Zealand was always going to have more comfortable time on their picks because they're just a better tapping team. And unfortunately, tiebreaker, not much tapping. And the gigantic difference maker, of course, just being Arj. Italy won the TB by 141K, and he put up a score that was best in the lobby by almost 200,000 points. You can do the math there, and that was all that mattered when all was said and done. Was just that TB performance carried them through. If he scores lobby average on that map, New Zealand ends up winning, but unfortunately, a little bit of heartbreak for the Kiwis in this particular matchup. They played very well, and they'll be dangerous in losers bracket, but Italy just a little better.
Definitely. Shout outs also to Shadow Moiko with the 640k, third highest in the lobby on the tiebreaker, and Kim Suhye with 690k for New Zealand. On to a couple of the very interesting matches that we had here. First off, France versus Brazil was an upset match, with Brazil winning that matchup 5-2. I think we were split on the decision for who ended up winning that match, and Dada and I ended up going with Brazil. For me, purely off of vibes and tournament experience. For Dada, he's Brazilian.
Yeah.
So this match was really, really cool to watch, and unfortunately for France, I don't know, man, early stage curse or what?
Yeah, I watched this match. I went back through the MP before this episode, and I still can't make any sense of it. France just needs to be better than this. Like, I'm sorry, with a team with the players that they have on this roster, they just need to be better. They need to be more consistent. They need to put up better scores in early rounds. And I don't know what happened to them on this particular day, but that did not happen. And Brazil just took full advantage by putting up very good scores on their own on a lot of picks. Maybe just the better early round team. I would think it's hard to argue against France having the higher skill cap in this matchup, but perhaps Brazil just having the higher skill floor, being a little lower variance, goes a long way in round of 32, and the pools aren't that hard yet. And that was exactly what propelled them to this win.
Yeah, I think it did come down to ultimately the consistency for Brazil. On the two maps that France won, they had very, very good team scores. No mod 4, free mod 2. They were number 3 on both of them. But outside of that, Brazil was just the better team. They couldn't find any wins. It felt like France really had a hard time stringing together more than one. Sometimes they struggled to even get one FC on a lot of these maps. And if you're going to go far on these tournaments, you really have to be able to put together, at the very least, one combo on every one of these early stage maps, especially where you see multiple teams putting up 2 to 3 full combos on certain maps.
Yeah, it really felt like a lot of the speed and tapping abuse from Brazil early on, with players like Coria Maluco and Fake Defons able to put up really solid scores on a lot of the speed maps, and then especially the four-way full combo #1 team score on DT1, very, very good score for Brazil there. But then France just, I think, struggled to convert on some of the other skill sets, right? Didn't win the no mod 1, lost out on the free mod 1 as well, where that's more of a flow aim focused pick. And I think if we see some added consistency from some of the players where we expect to see it on this French roster, like for example Musty, Akoro, Fie to some extent, who's been really, really solid in a lot of open rank tournaments recently, I think we can see maybe a different result for this match. But unfortunately, France just not quite able to put together that kind of consistent roster to full combo multiple times on most of the maps. That said, really, really good team score for France on the free mod 2. Kind of expected of this roster, right? They're a very good low approach rate reading team. In fact, their hard rock player was their lowest score on the free mod 2 last week. And a very good score on the tech map for France. #3 overall team score on the no mod 4 out of more than 18, given that's where Brazil placed on the map overall last weekend. So this is a team with the potential to do really well on skill sets that they have an advantage. Maybe we see them pick into stuff like more of the hidden pool. Maybe we see them pick into stuff like the Hard Rock 1 No Mod 2 this week, and they can potentially have a better time on those sorts of maps. So good luck to them in the losers bracket, and best of luck to Brazil in the winners bracket. They'll need it facing off against Poland. Last but not least, we have one of the single biggest round of 32 upsets of all time in the OS World Cup, Indonesia versus Ukraine. seed 9 versus seed 24, with seed 24 winning the matchup 5-0.
Yeah, I don't know that anyone would have predicted this, but this was just an absolute catastrophic performance from Indonesia. Just looking at their team scores, they had, didn't get, I think, one map they had above number 10 individual. Many maps they were down at like number 15 or 16 out of all the teams that played the map. The one map they did well on that I think was the Hidden 2, where they were number 4 individual. Ukraine was still the better team with number 2 individual. And outside of that HT2, for a team that you expect to go somewhat far with this caliber of player especially, it's definitely concerning. The consistency was just non-existent.
All that being said, I think the question I come away from this is, man, is Ukraine just legit or what? Like, you can say what you want about Indonesia's performance, but like, Ukraine played really well, man. I
did.
feel. I mean, let's see. They were number 8 on Nomad 3, number 7 on Nomad 4. They had the number 2 score of the week on Hidden 2. They had the number 2 score of the week on DT1. They had the number 6 score of the week on DT2. Like, you can make the argument that Indonesia underperformed, which they certainly did, but you also have to acknowledge that Ukraine, pardon my French, played really fucking well. Like, they may have, if they didn't win this match, it would have been close anyway with the team scores that they put up. Like, best case scenario for Indonesia, this was going to be a close match. But man, Ukraine played out of their minds, and I really can't understate like how impressed I am by the scores that they put up. It's shocking to see a 5-0, but when you look at the scores, it's a team that looks far better than their seed would otherwise sort of make you assume.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were running comparisons of Ukraine to like top teams, like comparing them to some of the best teams in the tournament. I think that comparison is warranted. For example, on the DT1 where they got 4.4 million, or DT2 where they got about the same score. Same for the Nomad too, honestly. They had really, really good scores on those 3 maps. I think the Nomad scores for Ukraine are really beatable on the Nomad 3 and Nomad 4. And maybe part of this matchup ended up just being a bad skill set matchup for Indonesia, where usually you expect them to play into the hiddens, to play into the free mods a little bit. And they didn't actually end up doing that in this matchup. So I'm interested to see if their team strategy and pick strategy is going to change going forward based on this match, or if they're still going to go into, some of the nomads and DTs as they have been so far.
Yep. I do want to add quickly before I move on, Poma number 11 individual for Ukraine is an absurd performance that I wasn't expecting. So if they can keep up that performance, Ukraine is going to be a scary team as well in the next round.
Yeah, we do have about a minute 30 left to discuss on this, so I'm going to add just real quick that Ukraine is one of those teams as well that I think is going to fall off really quickly. Like when we get to quarterfinals plus, I think Ukraine is going to have a really hard time replicating these sorts of scores, whereas Indonesia is probably the team with the better scaling. Just because Ukraine's team is filled with players who are, rank restricted tournament players, really, really consistent on star rating below 7, and really, really inconsistent on star rating above 7 for the most part. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this weekend goes for Ukraine, and how, because they're up against the
UK.
Yes, thank
UK
you.
versus UK.
UA.
There you go. That's a fun one.
Kind of, not really, but
kind of. Sort of. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing how that matchup goes, and even though I think UK is probably going to win that matchup, I'm looking forward to seeing how Ukraine's scores hold up compared to round of 32.
And this pool gets pretty hard pretty fast. Like, taking a look at the round of 16 pool, like, I would say it's considerably harder than the round of 32 pool. So we'll be finding that out pretty quickly.
Yeah, and even if we do expect UK to fall off quite hard into the later rounds, it's still exciting for a team that historically has had a difficult time getting far in OWC. Now they've got a chance to potentially make it to the quarterfinals. If they drop to the UK, like I think most people would expect, they still have a chance of making a run through the losers bracket to get to quarterfinals, which would, I believe, be their highest OWC placement.
All right. And that is going to take us into the next segment of this podcast, and what is definitely going to be the longest segment. We're going to be predicting the results of all but one of the round of 32 matchups in OWC, and we'll be joined for that by Doomsday and Demarsh. Welcome, gentlemen.
The UK has arrived.
The one matchup
We
that
are
we are
here.
not predicting, by the way, is the one that has already happened. That is Romania versus Philippines. If you want to watch that match, that's on OSU Live, but we will not be discussing it this week. We are going to be saving that for the recap next week. So yeah, welcome Doomsday, welcome to Marsh.
How's it
Thank you very
going? How's
much.
it going?
I think we're ready to get started with the first matchup here. We're going to start with losers bracket and roll into the winners bracket in the second half of this. So let's start off going in order down the list with Kazakhstan versus Japan. It's seed 32 versus seed 17. Kazakhstan got 5-0'd by South Korea, and Japan had a very, very close tiebreaker match versus China. In my opinion, this is a relatively easy match to predict, but what are your all thoughts?
Yeah, Japan like 5-0, 5-1. They're just a better team, top to bottom. They have the higher skill cap. They have the higher skill floor. I don't really see a world, unfortunately for Kazakhstan, where they make this all that competitive. Their victory in this tournament was qualifying, and they did that, and that is something that they can definitely be proud of. But Japan's just a better team here, and I don't think this match is likely to be very close, unfortunately, for Kazakhstan.
It's such an unfortunate role, man, for Kazakhstan in their first tournament, going into China and then straight into Japan, and both of those teams, in terms of the high-level matchup, those two, that's one of the most higher-level matchups of the entire round of 32. Facing both of those, it's a rough time. I'd totally agree. I hope for the best, but I don't know, man. Don't know.
I'm going to go 5-0 Japan as well. I completely agree. And that is unfortunate, but it is how it is when you're the 32 seed. If you want to have easier matchups, you got to place higher. So it's just how it is, unfortunately, for Kazakhstan.
Yeah. Nothing else to add, really.
Yep.
I'd like to see them get a point. I think that would be really, really good for Kazakhstan, but to expect much more is it's unlikely. It's unlikely.
All right, so that's all five of us in agreement rooting for Japan on this one. I think it's pretty likely to be a sweep. I will be happy for Kazakhstan if they get a point, because I have 5-1 in my pick'ems. Let's go Kazakhstan, get that point. On to our second match is going to be Turkey versus Indonesia, or rather Indonesia versus Turkey if you have the seedings the right way around, quote unquote. Challenge usually has them backwards for the first round of losers bracket. 9 versus 24. This was or 25 actually. This was going to be 25 versus 24 in the losers bracket, with of course Indonesia dropping to the real seed 24 in Ukraine in the round of 32. Aaron, start us off.
Well, normally I would say that this is a pretty one-sided win for Indonesia. However, after losing 5-0 in the first round and looking really uninspired, it starts to be a little more unclear. Turkey has Raikoho, who's playing really well. Turkey has Shinkiro, who played pretty well, and a decent roster past that. I think, assuming, and this is maybe a big assumption to make, but assuming Indonesia shows up and actually is on their game this week, this should be similar to Indonesia or to Turkey versus the United Kingdom, where it's something like a 5-3 or so. So I'm gonna make that my prediction. I'm gonna say Indonesia wins, but it's relatively close. But that is making the assumption that they actually remember how to play Osu this week, which is apparently a concern for them.
God.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I'm going to go somewhat similar. I'm going to say 5-2 to Indonesia. I think Turkey might be able to grab one of the hard rocks, one of the DTs. But after that, especially with the more difficult pool, Indonesia should win this one if, like you said, they are playing Osu.
I'd agree. I think even this early on, I think the skill cap of some of the higher seeded teams, some of the teams with higher ranking players are going to start showing up even now. Turkey have a great core, and I think they'll hold it together even when they're under pressure. If Indonesia crumble, if Indonesia drop the first couple of points and their heads go again, who knows what will happen. But I probably agree. I think Indonesia are going to step up this time and take the W. But I imagine Turkey won't make it easy for them. A 5-2 or a 5-3, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those matches where, like you said, if if Turkey can throw Indonesia off their game, maybe in the early rounds they pick up a couple of points. But I think once Indonesia they settle into that rhythm, I don't think Turkey have got the ability to fight back on that one. So it's going to be Indonesia 5-2 probably, maybe at best.
Okay. I'm gonna add
Do
some
it.
variety.
Do it.
I'm gonna say
Yes!
Turkey.
Let's
Okay.
go.
Come on.
This is
Throw your
not on my
pick'ems, come on.
pick'ems. This is not on my pick'ems. But here's how Turkey can still win. They had a really, really solid performance on the Free Mod 2 last weekend, and I think that kind of performance, especially with good no mod scores on both Shinkiro and Clutchex, can carry over to stuff like the no mod 4 this weekend. That said, I think that's more of a toss-up point. I think Indonesia is still going to have a pretty good hidden roster, still going to have a good reading roster. So I'm saying breakpoints on those types of maps are possible for Turkey. Turkey has a win head-to-head on the round of 32 no mod 4 and is a really good Hard Rock team, which is very good for them on this pool because you have Tech Hard Rock 1 and no mod 2 being Tech Streams. So they have two really good picks in those. They can still pick into stuff like the Hard Rock 2 this week, which is relatively flow aim focused and something that Indonesia did not pick into last weekend. And of course, Turkey is a good DT team. Indonesia had a pretty rough time on the DTs last weekend, all things considered. So if Indonesia isn't playing up to their usual caliber that we expect from them, Turkey is a team that is poised to take advantage of that. So I'm going to say Turkey 5-3 on like one low AR reading breakpoint, probably the no mod. I don't think they're winning the hidden 2. In fact, I think that's probably a ban for Turkey this week. But I do think they can potentially breakpoint on the no mod 4, and I think they have enough picks in the no mod, Hard Rock, and free mod pool to make the win possible. Now that's not on my pick'em.
That's some
But here's how Turkey
hopium.
can still
That's
win.
some hopium. But
If you won't
Working
put it
our
on the
way around
pick'ems,
that
it's not
one
true.
there.
If you won't put it on the pick'ems, it's just not true.
All right. On to the
Hey,
next one.
They won hidden 2 last time.
Yeah,
You never know.
It's possible. It's possible. Okay, on to the next one. We have Netherlands versus Finland. This is another loser bracket matchup. Seed 29 versus seed 20. Of course, Netherlands kind of getting swept out of the winners bracket early on by Russia, and Finland having a pretty close 5-3 matchup in the winners bracket last weekend. Demarsh, do you want to start us off this time? We'll go reverse order.
Yeah, of course. I think with this has the potential to be an interesting match. I think Finland are going to edge this out. I've put Finland down. I've had a look at some of the scores that they had over the round of 32. Some of their hidden and hard rock scores. They're close. They're very close victories. But between that and like some of the qualifiers, I don't know. I just think Finland definitely in these earlier round pools, they actually might have some potential to take this matchup. So I think, Netherlands have got to work hard. They've got to work really hard to actually stay in the tournament.
I think some of their players are super good early round on the Netherlands side. Aheo had a very good match against Russia, actually. Some great scores in that one. I think Netherlands did make a good account of themselves against a super team like Russia. Although you look at the cores of both sides, especially now you're around about 7-star-ish, no mod 1 difficulty pools. Finland just have a stronger core, don't they? They've got Amaseti, he got freezed in there, Zepe, Kalanlu. Netherlands, though, have a good, solid, turny team core, but they can get picked apart in 4v4. I think Finland can poke up the holes in their defense, I suppose. But I do reckon this has the potential, if the Netherlands really show up, to be close. This is almost one of those matches where I want to pick a spicy result, but I can't bring myself to do it. Yeah, I think Finland's going to take it. But I think Netherlands have potential in relative early round map pools to do damage against a team like Finland if they show up. I really hope they do, to be honest. It could be a good one.
I'll agree on the Finland. I'm not sure I agree that it's going to be super close. I'm going to have to take Finland 5-0. I'm going to predict the clean sweep for Finland. I think Amasthetic and Zepe have been playing incredibly well, and if we see a similar performance, I'm not sure who on Netherlands is going to be there to match, and I think they're just not going to be able to hold up, unfortunately.
So you look at their compared scores from round of 32, and Finland wins maps in common 4-0. And those are by scores of score differences of 1,000,000 and 600k and 300k, with the one remaining map being 175k on Fremod 1, which is a notoriously volatile map. But I think that kind of says it all for me. I think Finland is just kind of the better team, and I'm also unfortunately just kind of underwhelmed by the other scores from Netherlands that they put up in the first round. I mean, 1.5 million hidden one, kind of yikes there a little bit. So I think it's a very, very tough ask for the Netherlands to come back and win in this particular matchup. I just don't think they have quite the depth, and I think their core isn't playing quite at the level they need to win a match like this. I think Finland definitely goes onward. I think it's like 5-2, 5-1, 5-2. I don't think it's a sweep, but I don't think it's super close either.
Yeah, I'm gonna mostly agree. I think it's like 5-1 probably for Finland. Just looking at the head-to-head scores, Netherlands had a pretty tough time getting high up on the leaderboard on any map in round of 32. Their best score was hidden 1. And even though they have UC2, Finland has Kalanlu. So I'm not really convinced that Netherlands is going to be able to take those types of maps to a break point against Finland. Especially when Finland also has pretty good hard rock fill players in, for example, Zapay and Shadooz, to combat stuff like the hard rock 2 that Netherlands also had a pretty good score on. So I think there's chances for them to take a point, but even though I said Turkey on the last one, I don't think this match is very winnable for the Netherlands, unfortunately. And with that, let's move on to our next matchup. This one is probably going to be a pretty interesting one. Mexico versus Singapore. We're going to spend about 4 minutes on this one because we're behind a little bit on this. But going to be Singapore versus Mexico, seed 21 versus 28. These two both had some pretty interesting matches in the first round. Mexico faced off against the Philippines, which, of course, that's a pretty hard matchup. But Singapore took Romania to tiebreakers, so looked very good in the matchup that they had earlier this week. Let's get Doomsday to start us off on this one. Hello, Dooms.
Hello. You know what? Mexico came up against Philippines. Philippines have been on absolute on fire. They were played extremely well earlier today. I think Mexico got unlucky. They had some very good scores in that match. Kind of got overshadowed by Philippines on that one. And I reckon they'll have a good game against Singapore. But Singapore are one of the early round teams of all time, man. They are such a good early round team. They're very decent this year. Maybe not as strong as previous years, but Mexico played well. I almost want to give the edge here in the hope that they'll continue that form. And I think Mexico might be able to sort of break the curse of early rounds. And I think they could just edge this one out. I'm going to give this one to Mexico, But I reckon it's going to be close. It's a tiebreaker sort of angle, this, I think. Another one for Singapore, but they might be on the wrong end of it. I reckon Mexico might have a chance here.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and say Singapore on this time around. Tebi has looked incredible, although I do agree Mexico had some really impressive scores, actually, in the previous round. If they'd gone up against a lot of other teams that were lower seeded, they could have very easily won their round of 32 match. So I do think they're going to take a couple points off of Singapore, maybe 5-2, 5-3, but I think Singapore will be taking it in the end.
Yeah, I'm thinking along the same lines there as iFlame. I think Mexico has the potential to pull a surprise in this match. If like Wolfie, Cambros, Riot, Saint all go off. But I think Singapore just has the better overall roster. I think they have kind of some more picks that'll be slanted in their favor. They didn't have a lot in common last week, despite Singapore playing, 9 maps. They only had 3 in common. Singapore winning those 2-1 by pretty decent fashion. But I think it would take Mexico playing absolutely out of their minds to win this. I think Singapore just, again, the better team on the average day. So assuming this is an average to above average day for the teams, you just got to figure that Singapore is going to be a little better. They find maybe 1 or 2 break points, win it like 5-2, 5-3.
Yeah. Demarsh, you go ahead first. Before I go.
I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I think this will be close. I do think it has potential all the way to go to tiebreaker. So I'm going to say 5-4 to Singapore. I still think they edge it out.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty close match. Not gonna lie, I have Singapore on my pick'ems, but I will. Here's how Mexico can win. If they
Go on, Dio.
if they pick into the
Uh.
aim and they pick into the hard rock, I think they've got a really good chance of doing it. Maps like Mold, for example, are far better for Mexico this week than the Nomad one last week would have been. It's far more similar to stuff like your typical DT1 or the hard rock one from last week, for example. So I think there's more of that kind of basic consistency for Mexico in this pool, even if a lot of it is really awkward and a little streamy. With the free mod 2 being what it is, with the DT1 being what it is, with the hidden one being what it is, with the nomad one being what it is. And they're also a really good hard rock team, right? They got number 2 on the hard rock one last weekend, number 6 on the hard rock 2 last weekend. So I think there are good picks for Mexico, and I think that they have the ability to breakpoint Singapore on something like this week's, I want to say it's the free mod 1 that's a little bit more alti or kind of control focused. So I want to see a Mexico breakpoint. I'm gonna say either 5-3 or 5-4 Mexico. I think even if they don't win a breakpoint, given that the tiebreaker is basically aim consistency, they should be pretty good on it. And without any further ado, let's move on to the next match. It's going to be Argentina versus France. We're going to go pretty quickly through this one. I think very many of us expect France to win this with pretty much a clean sweep, as Argentina seed 31, France seed 15. So big seeding difference there.
Yeah, hard to trust France, unfortunately, after last week, but I still think they're going to win this because they're just better. Even playing poorly, I think they have a much better roster than Argentina. As you said, 31 seed, got 5-0'd by Poland. Not a lot to work with there, but unless France just plays even worse than they did last week somehow, there's really never a world where they can lose this matchup.
Yeah, Argentina, round of 32, had the last place team score on 2 of the maps they played. They had the second last place team score on 2 of the other maps they played. And they did all right on the last one, but should be, like Dio said, clean sweep for France, I'd guess.
Yep, ditto. France are definitely the stronger team. They're going to be better than they were last week. They'll step up. Argentina, I think, are just going to get swept on this one, to be honest. They'll have the better avatar curl up, though.
That's true. That's true.
If Ekoro would just freaking join France's, unless he didn't, this hasn't been updated. I don't know.
True.
Demarsh, anything different?
Here's how Argentina. No, I'm joking.
No.
All right. I do think Argentina can maybe get a point on speed. They have a pretty good
Yeah.
speed roster. They got number 5 on the DT2, but like that's gonna be it. If they do get a point, it'll be on one of the speed maps. Okay, on to our next matchup. That is Taiwan versus Sweden. We'll spend a little bit more time on this one. Taiwan, seed number 26, Sweden, seed number 23, the closest on paper losers bracket matchup this weekend, given the upset that happened with Ukraine and Indonesia. So, gentlemen, thoughts on this one? This is a Taiwan roster that has been struggling versus a Sweden roster that has been a bit rebuilt.
Wonder what time this is going to be scheduled for. I didn't look. I don't think it's 4 a.m. for Sweden.
I
this time,
don't
though,
think so.
which is handy.
Yeah, this is tomorrow 13 UTC. So
Okay.
That's
it
handy.
is the time as
Fine.
listed on screen.
Yeah, Taiwan are definitely, I think. So Taiwan's roster, of course, hasn't changed much in the last few years, and I think they're beginning to fall off. The harder map pools and the increasing competition is starting to fall away from them. This is the matchup where I think they're going to have a really good chance, though. But Sweden, as talked about, did look pretty good in their previous matchup. Had some great team scores on their very strong maps. I think Sweden just have the stronger core these days, but Taiwan have their strengths. They have the very scary hard rock players, they're good free mod players, a lot of good reading players in there, but Sweden should have the edge here, I think, across the board. Even on some of their Taiwan's good picks, you know, Sweden have some solid reading players, they got some great hard rock players. They should just have a bit too much here.
Yeah, I think it's hard to put favor on Taiwan. They've got some really, really strong players, but in this 4v4 format, it does so much work for you to have just an all-round better roster, and that is what Sweden has. A couple of years ago, you're right, they could have done better, but I can't see Sweden losing again. I think they just got unlucky last week.
Yep, I'm gonna go Sweden as well. I do think it will be somewhat close, probably one of the closest matches of the ones we predicted so far. But like you guys have said, I do think Sweden has the slightly higher skill cap, especially with a player like Recat. They do just have a more well-rounded team. I think they're gonna take it 5-3.
All right, so here's how Taiwan can win.
Oh my
It's always one.
Go on, do it
First-
for the boomers.
Okay, so first they bring GFMRT out of retirement, and then they get
Oh.
Sheena Noriko to leave the map pooling team and come play OWC again.
True.
There you go.
And
Who knew it
because
was that
neither of
easy?
those things is possible, Sweden's going to win this matchup. It is a real shame. Their roster has unfortunately kind of fallen off pretty hard with the loss of some of their long-standing members. Sheena Noriko is one of the most consistent tourney players that Taiwan has ever had, going back to like the HVIC era, since then. And without some of that like core player skill, Taiwan just does not have what they need anymore. And I think Sweden will take some confidence from how well they played against Chile last week. And I think they win against a Taiwan team that's really reeling. Like, I don't know what's going on internally. Based on what I've heard, it's not great. But it lends itself to a couple of quick losses. And I mean, after their lowest qualifier result I think they've ever had, that combined with their loss last week, I just don't really see a world where they can bounce back from that to win a matchup against a Sweden team that's playing pretty well.
Yeah, I'm gonna make this quick. I feel about the same as the rest of you. I'm thinking probably like Sweden 5-1, maybe 5-2 for Taiwan, but I think this is a pretty one-sided matchup overall. I think Taiwan can win points on speed, for example. I think they can potentially get some points in some of the more gimmicky hiddens, like the low approach rate hidden. Sweden bottom scored the hidden one last weekend. So I do think there are places for them to get points, but I don't think it's enough for them to win overall. So Sweden 5-1, 5-2. And that is going to put us actually a little bit ahead of schedule. So we have some extra time to talk about Thailand versus New Zealand. This, I think, is going to be a really good matchup despite the seeding difference with how ridiculously well Thailand has played in the bracket stage so far and how lopsided the skill sets for both of these teams are. Aaron, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like another situation much like last week with New Zealand versus Italy, where New Zealand is again just going to pick everything tapping that they can possibly pick, and Thailand is going to pick everything that isn't tapping that they can possibly pick. If you look at the scores from last week, New Zealand, they both played DT1, DT2. New Zealand won those by 664K and 1.3 million, respectively. So obviously a pretty nasty tapping advantage in favor of New Zealand here. I honestly think we could just run back New Zealand versus Italy for this matchup, where it's just nobody can win a break point because their skill sets are completely opposite. And with an aim consistency tiebreaker, I think that lends itself to Thailand. You've got Lasperia on your team. You've got some of these other players on your team who are just solid at like consistency stuff like that. And so if it goes that way, which I think it may well do, I unfortunately find myself in the position, despite wanting to be a New Zealand believer, I unfortunately find myself in the position of picking Thailand here in a 5-4 because I just don't think there's any break points again. And if they are, it'll be pretty surprising just because of the skill set disparity.
Yeah, this one's an interesting one. Les Berry looked incredible last week, number 4 individual across the whole tournament. But I think it's the same, right? I don't think we're going to see many break points. The skill sets for these two teams are just so different. And I think I actually am going to take Thailand in tiebreaker as well, just because the tiebreaker this week is that a more aim-focused tiebreaker. You know, we talk about how New Zealand has the edge on those tapping picks, but it's not a tapping tiebreaker, it's aim this week. And so I think if it does come down to the tiebreaker, Thailand will have the edge. That being said, I think Lasperia is going to have a lot of work to do to get them to the tiebreaker. And so it could very easily end up being a 5-3 New Zealand instead. We'll have to see.
So here's how New Zealand win this matchup.
Legitimately though, legit.
They win one break point.
Right, exactly.
That's all they need. If they
that's
win
how
one
it
break
goes.
point, it's
That's all
over.
it takes.
This matchup is gonna be great. You know what? With the pool having a bit more low AR, I suppose, especially in the free mods, you got 2 AR9s in there and an AR8. You feel like teams like Thailand would be able to lean more into that. But I feel like New Zealand have enough ability to steal a point. I can imagine Thailand. It's gonna be quite tense, quite nerve-wracking. And Thailand have some great tourney players that have been there, done that. I reckon New Zealand are going to take it, mainly to be a bit different, but I totally agree that this one is a proper coin flip. It should be a proper tussle, but I reckon New Zealand are going to edge it. 1 break point, 5-3.
Let's go.
Okay. I have put New Zealand to 5-1
Oh,
Really?
against
Oh.
Thailand.
Whoa!
A bit of a base pick, I understand, but I look at this New Zealand team and I look at the Thailand team. I just see a lot more potential for higher skill cap stuff. And I think there is a chance it goes to tiebreak if no one can pick up any picks, but I think New Zealand have got a lot more to show. I genuinely believe that this could very much be one-sided. So I'm still going to say New Zealand, but I'm going to stick with my 5-1 result.
Wow.
Theo with the tiebreaker.
Yeah, I'd probably say something like that if it was on a harder pool. But
Yeah.
on round of 16,
Mhm.
I think it'd be quite close.
Yeah. I think the way this match is going to go is obviously New Zealand is going to pick all the tapping maps, but there's only 3 of them in the pool, right? There's the DT2, DT3, and the free mod 3.
Yeah.
And Thailand is definitely going to ban one of those out. So you're only left with really 2 of them. After that, the question is, what does New Zealand pick? They are a team that likes flow aim. They are a team that has been relatively good on generic aim overall. For example, the DT1 last week was far more of an aim map than it was a tapping map. And I think that preference for some of the more generic aim is going to benefit them a lot in a match where the tiebreaker is an aim map. And also where the free mod 2 is pretty generic aim. It's awkward, sure, but like it's pretty straightforward. The no mod 1 is relatively generic aim plus streams, which we know New Zealand is really good at. And the Hard Rock pool exists for them. They can also just go into stuff like Hard
The
Rock.
Hard
2,
Rock pool
right?
is not a New Zealand Hard Rock pool.
It's a Hard Rock 2 for New Zealand, though. It's a Hard Rock 2 angle. So I think that I'm pretty much in agreement with Doomsday that like New Zealand just needs 1 breakpoint and they win. I think if it goes to tiebreaker, it is a complete coin flip toss up. You have really, really good consistency from Thailand on the tiebreaker in the form of Lesperi, and you do have good consistency as well from New Zealand in the form of players like Kim Soo-hye and Saikyu. So I'm not sure how a tiebreaker would go. I think New Zealand's team overall is probably going to be better on tiebreaker a little bit, but how hard Lesperi carries ends up mattering more, I think, for Thailand. So I'm going to give it to New Zealand. But I really am. I'm like 60-40 New Zealand, not like 80-20 New Zealand, right? Like, if this goes to tiebreaker, it's going to be goddamn close. So yeah, let's move on to our next matchup. Try and keep on time here with Spain versus Norway. Another losers bracket matchup with pretty close seeding. Seed 27 for Spain, seed 22 for Norway. These are both teams that had, again, some pretty interesting matchups in the round of 32. Norway, unfortunately, meeting up with Canada in the round of 32. And I actually don't remember who played Spain. If anyone can jog my memory, that would be
Germany.
awesome.
That was Germany.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they both got real unlucky, bro.
Yeah.
They got
It'd be
real
like
that.
unlucky.
It'd be like that. iFlame, you want to start us off? I don't think you've started yet.
Yeah, no, despite the seeding being relatively close, I don't think the match is going to be quite as close. I'm going to say Norway 5-1. I guess I can see Spain taking one of them, but Norway had some decent scores last week. Spain bottom scored 4 out of 5 maps they played, and so I don't think it's going to be much of a contest.
Yeah, I think Spain were. I guess it's maybe because they were against Germany and the mental side of things, but I think they were a little bit disappointing last week. I expect them to play better this week against a closer team, I think. But I think Norway have too much nous in it. I would give it to Norway as well. Spain have a couple maps they could take. They have some great mechanics players on their roster. But Norway just have skill across the board, across different disciplines in a pool like this. Plenty of gimmick to work with. I know it's stereotypical, but they have a scary gimmick roster. They should be just fine against Spain, I think.
Yeah, if you give Norway a gimmick pool or enough gimmick maps to work with, they are a scary team, as they always have been. Yeah, Norway are likely to win this match. Would like to see Spain do well. I think they do have some potential with certain maps, but I think Norway have got to have a really bad day for it to go Spain's way.
Yeah, so I mean, both these teams just got straight up boat raced in their first round matches, so it's like hard to take a lot away from those when they only had 5 maps each, or 6. They had 6 maps for Spain, excuse me, or Norway. But I think it's hard to say anything other than that Norway is just way better in general. Assuming that their speed players don't have another terrible day like they did last week, where like Ninrik and Penguinzi both did not do well on the DTs that they played, and they had Paper Candle in dropping 500k on DT2 and DT3. Like, they did not have a good time. Assuming that doesn't happen again, Norway not only has the edge on gimmick as they do against a lot of teams, but they also have the advantage on tapping mechanics. And so I just think it's hard to find a world where Spain has much of an inroad into this match. Maybe you just like coin flip consistency aim or something, but even then it's just Norway by a lot, I think.
Yeah, I think the one thing that makes this matchup a little bit interesting is that there's kind of an abundance of like alt tech kind of stuff that the all caps all spaces gang on Spain is pretty good at. The Nomad 2, the Hard Rock 1, the Free Mod 1, Nomad 3, obviously. So I think there are like some okay picks for Spain. But that said, yeah, as iFlame said, they bottom scored 4 out of the 5 maps they played last week among the entirety of the tournament. So it's pretty hard to give them the edge in any matchup going into round of 32, let alone one against Norway, who has players like Yolkspie, for example, who are going to be really good on those kinds of tech neutral maps as well, alongside players like Anthony W, -GN. So it's pretty, yeah, I think it's pretty clear cut Norway. I think I have Norway 5-2 Spain. I think they can maybe get some points on some of the like techier picks, or if Norway low rolls on some of the speed mechanics again. But that's about it from me. Okay, on to the winners bracket. That is all 8 losers bracket matches done for the round of 16. We're going to start off with one of the more probably one-sided matchups in the round of 16, I have to imagine. It's the first seed, South Korea, versus the 16th seed in China. If this were a round of 16 tournament instead of a round of 32 tournament, I think a lot of people would be predicting this to be, very, very one-sided. But China did look good in the round of 32.
You think? I would have figured it's early enough in this tournament for China to still have a very good go at this one. Although South Korea, as we know, do not like scale down no matter how hard the pool is, unless it's something completely stupid. But I still reckon China should have enough of a fight to make this competitive, although I don't think I'd give them the win. But I reckon that they'll make it tough for South Korea, I think, on round of 16 pool. What do you guys think about this one?
I mean, yeah, I don't. It's hard to guarantee anything. South Korea have in the past made mistakes on the early rounds that have cost them and sent them to the losers bracket earlier than they have the potential to go. But I think with how South Korea have performed this year, I don't see it. I don't see it. I just think they're too strong this year to make that kind of mistake again. China's a good team, don't get me wrong. They have got some great potentials, like especially across the DT pool and things, but I think at best you're looking maybe 2 points. But other than that, I still think South Korea will dominate by the end of the pool.
I reckon South Korea will win it. But I reckon it could be a solid 5-3. I reckon China will do some damage here, but I feel like I can't see it being any more than that. Not across this pool.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go a little bit more in favor of South Korea. I think it's going to be possibly, I'll say 5-1. I could see it being a sweep. Normally, I would agree China is a very good team. I think we're going to see some good scores from them. And I think normally they'd be able to put up some points against South Korea on a pool like this. But this is like the pool for South Korea. They're so good at tech. They're so good at these kind of alt favorite picks. And there's so many good options for them in this pool. They've got Nomad 2, Nomad 3. Even like some of these more rhythmic maps are great for them. Things like the Hidden 2, the Free Mod 1. the Hard Rocks, Hard Rock 1, they just have so many good picks. This is like the ideal pool for South Korea to me. And so I think China's going to have a really, really tough time, and we'll say 5-1.
Yep. I mean, that's pretty much all there is to it. South Korea has a top 3 roster in this tournament, and it ain't 3. China has David Crystal, Milkty, and Kurumi, and then kind of some other players. I think they might be able to scrape by like a point if South Korea underperforms on something, but I really don't see them doing much better than that. South Korea is just disgustingly talented, and they're good in early rounds, they're good in mid rounds, they're pretty good in late rounds. That this is just kind of unfortunately a bit of a hopeless scenario for China.
Yeah. China wins every single head-to-head map from round of 32 that both teams played. And if you look at qualifiers, they have the winning score compared to China on every single map from qualifiers aside from Nomad 2, of which there is no direct comparison in the round of 16. Enough said, I got 5-0 on the pick'ems. They're seed number 1 for a reason. I have them predicted to win the tournament. Like it's South Korea, baby. We're on to the next match. It's going to be the UK versus Ukraine. Notably for the UK, this is a roster that this weekend should have a Qualibet and Easy Champ, whereas last weekend versus Turkey, they did not have those 2 players. Versus a Ukraine roster that has been almost entirely without RAF GPO so far. And from what I hear, they're probably not going to be seeing a lot of RAF GPO through the rest of the tournament. He played 5 maps out of 22 in qualifiers and then played no maps in round of 32 and then was not tagged in the thanks team post from their captain after the round of 32 match. So I don't know.
Isn't he like really good? Isn't he like
He is,
normally
yeah.
really
he was
good?
very good last year.
Isn't he
but
like their
I don't
player?
know. I don't know
one
exactly
of their
what's
better
going on.
players.
But all I have to say is that I don't know if we're going to be seeing a lot of RAF GPO in this OWC.
Well, that's going to
so
hurt them
that
for
in
sure.
mind, let's start with the UK people for this one.
Right, of
Demarsh,
course.
Okay.
Demarsh, what are your
Go
thoughts
on,
on the
Demarsh.
matchup?
Well, you know, it's not favoritism, right? Let's start by saying that. It's not favoritism. However, UK played without 2 of their members last week. And okay, they had some trouble, but you know, Bubbleman was at LAN. They just weren't quite together. I think this week they are all expected to be there. So I don't see a way for Ukraine to go in this. So at best, I know they've been playing really well, and I still think they can do really well on these earlier pools. However, UK are going to take it 5-2, I think.
It's a scary one, I think, because Ukraine played fantastically on the round of 32. You mentioned it earlier, the round of 16 is a big difficulty step up. I still think Ukraine are going to be very decent at it. They still have the ability to multi-FC some of these maps, but it is the point where skill cap is going to start showing at least a little bit, even if only a tiny bit. And if UK have their entire roster, the maps that Ukraine were good at, they had really good score on the Hidden 2. They're really good at DT1. If they have Akalib and Easy Champ back, that's going to counter that one pretty hard. So I would give this to UK. I think they should take this relatively comfortably, like I say a 5-2 or something like that. But if Ukraine show up again and they avoid the skill cap on maybe a couple of these maps, this one could be quite scary for the UK. No doubt.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree. You guys kind of took the words right out of my mouth for the exact same reasoning. I think UK is going to take this one. I do think it's going to be 5-1 for UK. I think its skill cap will hit them a little bit harder. So 5-1 for the UK, we'll say.
Based on the way Ukraine played in the last round, I don't think that the skill cap's going to hit them quite that hard quite yet, considering how well they were doing on the maps in round of 32. That being said, with Kalabed and Easy Champ back, the United Kingdom just has a flat-out better roster. I think they win most picks, and there are maybe some contested picks out there. I think Ukraine can put up a good showing again. If they perform like they did last week, this can be something like a 5-3. But United Kingdom firing on all cylinders wins this, by 1, maybe 2 break points, and I don't think the outcome is ever really all that in doubt. That being said, if they are missing anybody again, or if they underperform and Ukraine plays really well, that's the way that Ukraine can kind of get into this one. It requires a little bit of divine providence, perhaps, for that to happen. But I think in general, United Kingdom is just expected to win this and win it relatively comfortably.
Yeah, I think I'm mostly in agreement. I think I have 5-2 because there are some picks that I think are going to be a little bit more toss-uppy or coin flippy in this map pool. That said, Hidden and Hard Rock are both kind of the UK's playground. When you look at the scores from last weekend, I think UK was really, really damaged on their Hidden 2 score by the absence of both Easy Champ and Akalibed, who were around in qualifiers and played both Hiddens for the UK in qualifiers, which earned them, might I remind you, these #1 hidden seeding out of qualifiers. So despite what the head-to-head looks like on Hidden 2 from last weekend in the round of 32, I think the UK, with their full roster, is probably going to perform a lot better on the Hidden pool this weekend. So I think a lot of the picks for the Ukraine will probably end up being either no mod or DT focused, where there are some true toss-up picks, right? Ukraine has a head-to-head advantage on the DT1 from last weekend. They've got head-to-head advantage on the DT2 from qualifiers and kind of a split on the DT1 from qualifiers. So I think there is potential for Ukraine to take some points in this matchup. What I don't think is that Ukraine is going to win this. I think we're probably going to see the United Kingdom advance, and I think it's going to be relatively convincing as long as their roster is full. If they don't have the full roster, no holds barred, like anybody can win the matchup. But if they have the full roster, I think it's probably UK.
Yeah,
Fingers
so
crossed.
that's 5 UK picks. That means Ukraine are winning 5-0 then. Like,
Yep,
Easy.
exactly.
Easy.
Not even a question.
Yeah. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, by the way. We got some extra time now, so let's talk about another pretty interesting matchup. It's going to be Russia versus Hong Kong.
Oh boy.
This is seed number 4 versus seed number 13 in the round of 32. Russia is definitely not seed number, 26? That is seed number 4. They are very, very good. Yeah, this is a really ridiculous roster from Russia this year. They qualified in top 4 to the OS World Cup and then proceeded to, if memory serves, go 5-0 in the round of 32. Sorry, 5-1 against the Netherlands in round of 32 versus Hong Kong, who were 5-3 in a pretty contested match against Finland.
So, can you speed abuse somebody as hard as Russia is going to speed abuse Hong Kong in this matchup? I don't know if it's possible to have a speed abuse matchup that's any worse than this. Hong Kong is counting their lucky stars that once they ban one of the speed picks, there will only be 2 left. They're very, very fortunate that there aren't more tapping maps in this pool than DT2, DT3, and Free Mod 3. But Russia also, I think, gaps them on Hidden and will play very well in Hard Rock as well as some gimmick stuff. I think this is a tough matchup for Hong Kong in pretty much any circumstance. Like, they need MCY4 to play out of his mind. They need A21 to play really, really well. And even then, I think Russia just has a better, deeper roster. I don't want to say this is a sweep, but there's a world where Russia can just sweep this. But I think they win it no matter what. And it's pretty one-sided just due to the skill set issues.
I'm gonna some more or less agree. I think Russia will take this one. I'm not sure it'll quite be a sweep. I feel like Hong Kong, they still are a strong team. The pools are early enough that we should see some strong scores out of them. And I could see them taking a pick on something like the Free Mod 1 or the Free Mod 2. They might just ban out the Free Mod 3. Let's say
France!
maybe 5
Why is
to...
it France? Sorry.
Oh,
Why am I
France?
France?
Wait a second.
France
Why
predictor.
am I
Wait a minute.
France?
Russia
Sorry to
is
interrupt. I
France.
just saw that. That's pretty
Go
funny.
France.
Turn him on his side and we're good to go.
Just rotating
Benign.
towards me. Anyway, go on. I apologize.
I'm gonna say 5-1. We'll say 5-2 for Russia. I believe in Hong Kong to get 2 points.
Yo, go France.
Oh,
Go
let's
France.
go France.
I might be bigging up France again because, yeah, Russia is so strong. Hong Kong, it's down to whether the Hong Kong star players just absolutely go just Buddha mode on this pool. And I'm sure they will. A21 MCY4 are going to show up because they always do. But I can't see that being enough against Russia, who have so much talent across the board. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a sweep. Although Hong Kong, I imagine, might take a couple of points close. I can see Russia really showing up. So certainly, I think a realistic result is a 5-1 or a 5-2. But Russia are going to take it. They've just got too much in the 4v4 head-to-head here.
Yeah, exactly the same. Like, there's a world where Russia sweeps. There's a world where Hong Kong can pick up maybe 2 or 3 picks, but you're expecting Russia to get a 5-1. They are so good this year. There is a massive expectation for them to do well on this match, and yeah, I want Hong Kong to win. I want them to do really well, but it's Russia, dude.
I do think this is going to be a little closer. And there's a couple reasons for that. So Russia does have head advantages on some of the DT picks, DT2, DT3 from last weekend, for example, and DT1, DT3 from qualifiers. But on DT2 and qualifiers, Hong Kong actually had the best team score between the two teams on that map. And in round of 32, the wins for Russia on DT were not particularly convincing. They were number 9 out of 20 scores on DT3, so middle of the pack score. And Hong Kong was number 12, not too far behind, about 250k behind in team score. Similarly on DT2, Russia was number 12 out of 24, and Hong Kong was number 15 out of 24. Middle of the pack scores for both of them, and less than a 400k team difference, which on DT is quite small overall. So I do think that speed is breakpointable for Hong Kong, especially when they were number 5 out of 16 on Nomad 2 last weekend. So I'm not like, this Russia team is different because they are not necessarily a speed team. They have really good DT aim, really good like DT reading. They have a lot of really good DT reading players like Chaconi, Welter, Dasuk, Scroll. Like, all of those are really good DT reading players. And I think that maps like the DT1 and later on DT4s, Russia is going to benefit a lot from having those players. But this is more of like a DT gimmick, hard rock gimmick aim roster and like mixed mechanics roster rather than just the like pure speed abuse that we've seen in past years for Russia, at least from what has come out of the tournament so far. So I think Hong Kong has chances to take points on those. Hong Kong has chances to take points on aim and gimmick, and especially on the hidden one this weekend. I think Hong Kong should have a relatively good shot. They were the number 1 team score on Nomad 1 last weekend. That said, Russia's still going to gap on most of the maps. They have a really good hidden team, a really good hard rock team, and they have still head-to-head advantages on both DTs. So I do think they're going to end up being better. I think I have like 5-2 on the pick'ems. So I think Hong Kong is going to make this relatively close, but I don't think they're going to win. Any further thoughts? We are a little bit ahead of schedule, so any closing thoughts on this matchup?
I'd like to see Hong Kong. I'd like to see Hong Kong make it close. I think that would be cool.
Yeah, it would be. It'd be very cool.
So they have some good experience in their roster. You know, F2X and Shion have been here, done that. Hibiki as well. Like I said, these players are in there for a reason. But you look at the 4v4, really. It's the 4v4. Those backing players for Russia, you know, they're all just going to be so good at whatever they're playing, especially at this round. It's not going to be a challenge. I can see Hong Kong having to fill a 4, especially on some of those speed picks. Certainly last week, their 4th had to fill so hard. And that's really what it's going to come down to, really. It's that team, the 4v4. If it was just A21 and MCY4 versus 2 of Russia, you'd be talking different. But it's that out of those, the 8v8, head-to-head, Russia's roster is very deep, way deeper than Hong Kong's. And that's really what it is all about, I think.
All right, let's move from what we expect to be relatively close to a matchup that I think a lot of people expect to be relatively one-sided. It's Poland versus Brazil, seed number 2 versus seed number 18 in the round of 16. Now, Brazil had a good match last weekend. They had a good match versus France. Poland is an entirely different beast from France. Doomsday, you want to start us off on this one? Because this is a matchup.
Yeah, it's a different matchup. I think Brazil, they had a good game for sure, but I think they were helped by France dropping a bit of a clanger in their matchup. Let's be honest. But they had some very good scores. The number 1 and number 2 scores from Brazil were very solid. But Poland's scores across the board on everything were simply top class. they are one of the favourites for a reason, and they showed it last week, and they are only going to get stronger. I can see Brazil pushing them close again. Their core is good, and they've shown it. But Poland just have so much ability. They are in it to win it, and I can't see a world where Brazil beat Poland at this level. So really, Poland all the way. Polska Gulom. Brazil will make it challenging though. Totally not because I put them first or anything on my prediction. Nothing like that.
No, definitely not.
Totally not.
Well,
iFlame, your turn.
iFlame, go ahead.
Go.
Yeah, so Brazil did have some good scores, but Poland is Poland, and they were based on the team placements on maps, they were the best performing team in the last round. At the start of this podcast, we talked about Maleshevsky is just the best tournament player in the world right now. Did get second to mrekk individual in the earlier round, but is going to be incredibly consistent in this next match. Even outside of Maleshevsky, there's just so many good players on this Polish team. They're a second seed for the reason. And we're going to say 5-0.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever a world where what happened to France last week happens to Poland. Just very, very unlikely to see them underperform the way that the France team did. I think their skill floor is really, really high. Of course, their skill ceiling is literally like, top 2, top 1. When you've got it has to feel really nice to have a player on your team like Maleshevsky where you just trust that you're going to have an FC or near an FC on basically every map, and if that doesn't happen, it's an utter and complete shock. It must be, I feel like that's got to take a lot of pressure off of the rest of the team where he just perma lobbies and he FCs like 9 or 10 maps in qualifiers, stuff like that. So Poland's skill floor is just too high. They're not going to drop off the way France did. And Brazil, good job winning last week. Well done taking advantage of France not playing their best. Unfortunately, Poland is not France, as has been said. This is like 5-0 territory for Poland, I think. Very, very comfortable win.
You know what? That's a great point, actually. Sorry to interrupt. But Maleshevsky basically mentioned about having a player on your team that FCs everything, taking the pressure off everyone else. That's a great point, actually. I can imagine they're a bit less nervous knowing they have such a player on their team.
I mean, you were there with Bubbleman, right? Like a few years ago on OWC teams where he was just going to top score everything and there was nothing anyone could do. And I have to feel that it's a similar sort of circumstance a few years later now with Maleshevsky on the Poland rosters.
Demarsh?
Poland.
Enough said.
Enough said.
Enough
said. I'll make this quick because we're running over a little bit on 2 minutes, but 2 minutes is a very short time anyway. Poland outscored Brazil on literally every map in qualifiers. The single map where both of Poland's scores were not better than both of Brazil's scores was Nomad 4, and they still outscored them on it anyway. Round of 32, head-to-head, every single head-to-head map is a Poland victory, except for DT1, which, you miss once and you're now number 10 on the leaderboard. Poland also ended up top scoring both of the other double times. I got 5-0 on the pick'ems. It's Poland. Let's move on to Australia versus Chile. Seed 7 versus 10 in the winners bracket, and this is the closest on paper winners bracket match. Dumia Secret Box, AKNZX, also known as CS2, Sio, JGLF, mrekk, O/, and Zintex versus Intercambing, Unigonza, Mathy, number 37, Suntan, TFG, and Chalk Gamer. iFlame, do you want to start us off on this matchup between two pretty closely seeded teams in winners bracket this week?
Yeah, I do think this is going to be a fairly close one. I think these are both two very good teams playing on, of course, an easier pool. That being said, I'm going to give this one to Australia. I would say maybe 5-3. mrekk, of course, has looked incredible so far, as you'd expect. Number 1 individual performance in the round of 32. And I think Australia just has, on top of, they just have a bit of a more well-rounded team. A Secret Box, Doomy have both looked incredible. I think they're going to be very strong. And while Chile certainly has their picks, I don't think it's going to be enough to overcome Australia this time around.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Australia looked really good in the round of 32, and I was really impressed by how well some of the new players came into it and really stole the show. Sure, it's around a 32, but seeing those newer players turn up on their first OWC and show up so well bodes well going forward. And on earlier pools, they have such a good roster across the board. So do Chile, though. So do Chile. But Australia just feel like they're going to be better on near enough every map here. Could be tight, though. Chile have the ability to make this really close, but Australia edges it for me.
Yeah. So, Chile.
Ooh.
I think this team has the potential to do so well this year. Their roster is back. Compared to last year, it's like night and day. I would not underestimate this roster. They have some of the best players in the tournament scene right now. And Australia are a very good team. You know, having someone like mrekk on the team, you know, almost bringing home FCs left, right, and center is so good for your team. But I just think that Chile are going to win this one. I think they're going to win 5-3. It's still going to be close. But I do think Chile are going to show up in this round of 16.
Okay. I can see it. I can see it.
There's no guaranteed winner. But
Yeah.
I think Chile might surprise people this round.
This is an interesting matchup to me because, like, you've got kind of players across all levels of the skill gamut on both teams and kind of in similar places, right? Like, you have, intercamping Matthew, mrekk, Doomy, who are some of the best players, or, either right now or historically for their countries and in the world, with intercamping and mrekk both being on really great form for the past, like, year or so. I'm super big on the Australia Hopium this year with this new look roster, though. Maybe that's not surprising to people who know me, but it's still the new players that they've brought in are so key. The AKNZX, Sio, JGLF, O/Zintex. It's so important to take note of these guys because of what they're capable of and what they bring to this roster. In terms of tournament experience over the recent times. Like, these guys are all super active. They're very dedicated. They want to put on a good showing. And when you have mrekk, who is, the best player in the world in solo play and has proven that he can beat Malashevsky, who's kind of been consensus one of the best players in tournaments. Clearly another team where some of the pressure is taken off by having a guy like that on your roster. For me, I am going to pick Australia here. It's a very, very tightly contested matchup because both teams have a really good roster, pretty much top to bottom, especially in a mid round like this, where some of those newer players who we haven't seen in late stage open rank international play, we don't know necessarily how they're going to do in that stage. But we're early enough to where that's not going to be a factor. We're early enough to where it's that consistency factor, and I think Australia's new members really want to put on a good showing. I think they're really dedicated to making a name for themselves, and I think Australia wins this. But it's like 5-3 or even tiebreaker.
Yeah, I have to mostly agree with what Aaron has said so far, that I think this is an incredibly close match. My pick'ems have Australia winning it in tiebreaker. Chile is a really, really good hidden roster, and I think importantly there is no like hidden flow aim pick this week. It's an awkward aim hidden pick with some flow 1/3, yes, but it's not similar to the hidden one from qualifiers where Australia would have a decisive advantage if you're looking at kind of the head-to-head scores there. Chile had a pretty good run on the hidden one last week in qualifiers as well. This is clearly the better low AR team, and there are 2 low AR reading maps for Chile to choose from. Notably, you cannot overmod Hard Rock on the no mod free mod pick, or the no mod low AR pick, right? So that is better for Chile in this matchup and better for low AR gimmick teams in general this week. I think that's kind of an interesting consequence of the low AR pick being moved to no mod rather than in free mod, as we've seen before. Chile also with really good kind of higher BPM awkward aim displayed on the no mod one from last weekend. Australia is obviously going to tapping abuse, right? Like, we're going to see the speed abuse come through for Australia, but that's only 2 maps, assuming the ban comes through from Chile on one of those 3 picks. So you're probably going to see Chile pick into gimmick, pick into tech, pick into reading, and Australia maybe pick into aim for Chile as well. Australia pick into the tapping, pick into some of the more straightforward aim mechanics like DT1, for example, or the Fremont 2, maybe. I don't actually know exactly what else they're going to pick into in this match. They do also have a really good Floam roster on the side of Australia, so maybe something like the Nomad one this week would be fine for them, given how Floam intensive that map is. But I do think this one's going to be close. I think Chile's a really good team. And if it goes to tiebreaker, I think we're going to see a really, really close TB, given that they have intercamping Matthew for the side of Chile. So, yeah, it's going to be a close match. I got Australia winning in tiebreaker. I think the mrekk difference is going to matter a lot. We talked about it when we were talking about Malashevsky on the side of Poland. But having that god tier, double S tier player on your team is so huge for the mental buff on the kind of expectations of the rest of the roster, right? If you know you have one player who's going in for every map and FCing a 9 out of 10 maps that they play every time they play, the pressure is off of you to perform if you're going in for only one map, right? So your specialists get a lot less of those expectations put on them instead. And mrekk has shown in other tournaments, in roundtable grand finals, in Corsairs Closed grand finals, that he can handle those types of expectations being put on him. So I think that buff is crucial for Australia. Obviously, Chile has intercamping as well, and he provides a similar sort of buff for their roster. And I think this is going to end up just being a kind of different focus of both of the rosters, with Australia being a really good mechanics team. I think the tiebreaker favors them a little bit this week, so I give them the edge in that. And otherwise, I think it's just a complete toss-up in this matchup. I think these are both really, really good teams this year.
One of the matches of the weekend for sure. This is such a good game.
Yeah. This prediction looks pretty one-sided, but I think just
it's
as
way
easily
closer
Chile
than
could win this.
it's way closer than 4-1 would indicate for sure. Like this is all
They've
of
all
us just
got-
saying this is probably really close, but
I'm like
Yeah.
55-45 Australia.
Yeah,
I'd
Australia
agree.
Yeah,
wins this.
it's
I think
really
so
difficult.
close.
Underestimated Chile, man. You guys are gonna regret it.
I don't think
I'm
any of us
telling
are
you.
underestimating Chile. We're literally all saying they can win the match, bro.
Demarche, I have been burned predicting Chile before. All right, do not put this on me.
It's okay. When Chile clean sweeps, we'll get lots of tweets, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
Exactly.
if they clean sweep this, like I'd be shocked, because even if they win, it would take a miracle for a 5-0 here, either direction.
All right. That's going to do it for Australia versus Chile. Right on time, we're going to switch over to the United States versus Italy. And let's make this one quick, boys. It's the USA. They are 7-time OS World Cup champions, 5 times running so far. They, for the first time since qualifiers have been around, qualified in as seed number 3. But honestly, they look just about as strong as they ever have this year. It's still a very, very good United States roster, especially early stage. The skill set coverage for this roster is absurd. Yeah, I got USA 5-0. Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we talked a lot about how USA overspec'd into speed, and last week, of course, we had the whole New Zealand picking speed into Italy, and this week, not a lot of speed, but USA is going to pick it and win it the same way. But unlike New Zealand, USA actually wins other picks as well against this Italy roster. Yeah, they're number 3 seed, but they're still really, really good. It's still the United States, and they still will just come in. And I think they come into this tournament, like I said last week, I think they came in a little bit of chip on their shoulder after a lot of question marks, a lot of doubt about the roster construction and situations that have been discussed ad nauseum. So I think maybe even be trying a little harder than they have in the past. And I think this is a 5-0.
I think so too. You look at the scores from Italy last week, although they did play well to win the tiebreaker, it was a lot of the middle of the pack scores. You didn't see like some of the other lower seeded teams where they had a couple maps where their scores were one of the top team scores of the tournament. Italy just was quite consistent, but they don't really have the skill cap, I think, to take a point off the US. So I'll have to go 5-0 as well, as much as I want this Italian team to succeed.
I'm going to go on the hope here and say Italy can take a point. I'm going to give a point to my boys.
I actually
champion.
revoked what I had earlier. I actually have 5-1 on the pick'ems. I'll elaborate in a second. Go ahead, Dooms.
Hey, got to see you believe in 2DO. But I think they'll take a point. They have the players, and Kirochi has played so well. Shadow Monaco's played well. Arj definitely has the ability, I think, to do a bit better than he did last week. So I reckon they'll take 1, but I can't see it being more than that. US, are stronger than them on their stronger picks, and they can speed abuse. It's a US dub. That's how it is.
I
They're
mean,
too
like
good.
US, they've managed to get over that first round not dropping any points curse that they've had for the last 2 years,
Oh, yeah.
which I'm thrilled about. So, I can't see them having any trouble with Italy in this round. So I've put them at 5-0, but I mean, anything. It's the World Cup. Anything can happen.
Okay,
Who
so
knows?
I have 1 point for Italy on my pick'ems because if you look at qualifiers, they had the number 2 score overall on DT1, the number 9 score on Hard Rock 2, which is pretty solid. Although RNG, they also got number 38 on it, so quite RNG. And then the number 2 score on Nomad 1 in qualifiers. And this team has this pool has a lot of aim consistency, so if Italy spam picks aim consistency, I think they can get a point. But that's all. I think like 1 point max.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
On the aim.
Yep. So that's it. United States almost certainly going to win against Italy. Good luck to Italy in the losers bracket, probably. I would the upsetting in this match would be absolutely wild. On to the next one. It is, and the last match of the weekend that we're going to talk about, Germany versus Canada in round of 16.
How has this happened?
This is
Yeah,
stupid.
how has this happened? Oh,
Who wants to start with this? Go on.
yeah. Dooms, you
I'll
want to
wait.
start us off on this one?
Sure, I can kick things off on this one. What, first of all, and then second of all, this matchup on this pool is, how do you predict this? These two teams should wipe the floor with this pool, in theory. So, does it come down to how they play on the day? Does it come down to how good they're feeling? I think Canada are going to have the edge on those free mods. There's a lot of low AR in there, and they have such good mod players. They have enough players to stick hidden hard rock on things and enjoy that score buff without any detriment, really. Germany do as well. But Germany have brilliant speed. Germany have some strong players across the board. But I just feel like calling this one. I might as well just flip a coin. I have it as a TB. And in my pick'ems, I went for Canada. With the,
Let's go!
I went
Let's
with
go.
Canada. I'm going against my European bros, but it is what it is. I reckon once it hits that TB, with it being quite aim consistency focused, very mechanics focused, Canada on a tiebreaker like that should edge out Germany, I feel, in a 4v4. They have a ridiculous roster for a aim based TB. But again, even that you can't call. What a match this is going to be. I can't wait to see this one. That's all I'm going to say.
Aaron, Demarsh, either of you?
I'm saving mine.
I have Germany on tiebreaker. I feel like
Oh,
has Germany ever not beaten Canada, bro? Like they play every other.
No.
They've played like several times, and Germany has always won. Now, granted, it's always a late round, right? It's normally like semifinals or something. They've never played this early that I can think of. And it's interesting because in terms of skill set, like it actually feels like Canada's in a pretty good spot here. But something about it just makes me low key just kind of trust in ever so slight advantage for Germany if it goes to a tiebreaker for no real particular reason, considering that the skill set should go to Canada. But I don't know. I'm just going based on history here. I think this can very well go to tiebreaker. Canada could very well win it if it does. But there's just something in the back of my mind that says to pick Germany. So I'm picking Germany with very little confidence. It's literally like 51-49. They're really good at a lot of things. Canada, likewise, really good at a lot of different things. So I think this is just like match of the week, and by this along with the Australia-Chile match. And I am just looking forward to watching it because God only knows what's going to actually end up happening.
Demarsh, you're up. We're saving the two Canadians for last, bro. You gotta
Oh,
go.
okay, that's how we're doing this. All right. So, okay, Germany, Canada. All right, I'm putting Germany.
oof.
Now, the reason I'm putting Germany, because there's no other way to decide this, right? Canada threw qualifiers. For whatever reason, they weren't there. They threw. They deserve.
Xylus and Judy
go
were at TwitchCon. I mean,
to
that's
the
like you
losers
can't
bracket.
count that.
I can, and I will. They deserve to go to the losers bracket for throwing qualifiers. End of story. Germany. Dio's not letting me
All
on
right.
again.
No, I'm in now. So here's how it is. Got both of these teams are ridiculously good. Obviously, the last time that these two actually faced off in OWC was actually 2021, and they have pretty much always faced off on late stage pools.
I want to
Is
say
there
that
a
was a 7-1 as well.
Yeah. Is there a mental thing going on from late stage pools that you can apply to early stage? I really don't know, given that this Germany roster has also changed quite a bit, right? There's a lot of different players from back in 2019, 2020, 2021, when it seemed like these teams played every year against each other in the later stages. The big thing for me is I see lots of aim in this pool that both of these teams are really good at. Lots of awkward aim in the hidden pool and free mod that Canada is particularly good at, and then the DT aim and kind of no mod streamy aim that Germany should be pretty good at. There's good hard rock picks for Germany. There's good hidden picks for Canada this week. There's the kind of interesting no mod low AR pick for Canada this weekend. There's really good speed maps for both of these teams. I think speed is going to be like the thing that both of these teams just avoid until the very end of the match if they can, because I don't think either of them is favored on speed. Last weekend, Canada had a leg up on Germany looking at the head-to-head, but if you look at the qualifiers, actually it was kind of both of them. Canada with better scores on DT1, DT2, but also a far worse score on DT2 than either of Germany's. And then Germany beating them out on the DT3. So I feel like the speed is like 53-47 Canada favored or something like that. I don't know, man. Like, how
Like
close
it.
can I make it, right? So I give this to Canada in tiebreaker because I think they have a lot of really good aim players. The consistency from some of their tournament players is going to be really high on the weekend. And obviously both of these teams are going to come really prepped to the match, right? You're not going to see either of these teams having not practiced the map pool or anything like that. I think that the abundance of forced low approach rate in this pool as compared to optional low approach rate as usual on the free mod is good for Canada. And I think the free mods this week are also okay for them with the aimier, like awkward free mod and free mod 2 this weekend. That said, Germany's a really good hard rock team, is still going to be solid on the free mods, is still going to be very good on some of the no mods as well, like the techno mod, for example, is going to be really good for them. It's super hard to call. I think you could flip a coin on this match and just put tiebreaker on pick'ems, and whichever the way the coin flips is just as good as any other way. But obviously, I give it to Canada. I'm living in Canada. I got the Remembrance Day pin on. I'm ready for them to go nuclear on this match. Let's go, Canada.
Let's go Canada indeed. Now let's be clear. This is potentially a little bit biased of a prediction, but I'm gonna have to split the tie and go Canada as well. You know, I've already flipped the
Let's
coin.
go.
It came up heads. Canada is taking this one. No question about it. It's Canada. They've got a great DT roster. They had number 3 team score on the DT2, number 2 team score on the DT3, beating out Germany. Outside of that, there is a lot of rating in this pool, which is great for Canada. And so I'm going to say 5-3. I think tiebreaker is a very real possibility. But look, if we get to tiebreaker, Zoodinator AIM will do the rest, okay? She'll throw on the hidden hard rock, pull out the tiebreaker SS. No problem whatsoever.
No bias there.
Canada,
No bias
no
here.
bias
Whatever.
at all, by
Zero
the way.
bias, of course.
Zero bias. Least
I-
bias of any prediction.
I just want to point out as well, like, whoever wins this match, right? There is no winner out of this match, right? Because you end up against the United States in quarterfinals. What is going on with this side of the bracket? There is no winner. It doesn't
so
matter.
Doomed. It's so doomed.
Yeah.
The seed 2-3 side of the bracket is completely doomed.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's that's what happens when you in the qualifiers.
Yeah,
It's
how do you-
tough, but yeah,
And
I'm
then,
gonna go
and then you
Canada.
get Poland in semis.
Oh
And
no!
then you get
It's
Poland
just,
in semis, right?
listen,
Poland in
what are you gonna
semis.
listen.
Oh
We'll
my
hold on to
God.
the copium for another couple rounds. Canada's going all the way this year. Poland,
All right,
USA, no problem.
Easy.
Oh my god.
Easy.
Can we just spare a thought, please, for whoever has to face the loser of this matchup? the week
In
after.
losers bracket, yeah.
Oh,
that's-
Loser
that's
of
so-
I'm
so
sorry
tough.
for the
It's
losers
a
bracket.
Kazakhstan Japan. It's Kazakhstan Japan winner
Oh, no.
gets the
Oh.
loser of this match.
Oh,
Yeah, and then
Pain.
after that, I'm gonna check the bracket real quick. But after that, I think it would be if it's
USA, Italy
Kazakhstan,
loser.
Japan loser, it'd be either Turkey, Indonesia, or loser of 31 is Italy. So yeah, Turkey,
that's
Indonesia,
tough.
Italy, Kazakhstan, Japan versus either Germany or Canada. It's a bit rough. It's rough out
Can we
there.
just say
A
like
little
it's
bit.
crazy how like overall good like OWC teams
Oh,
have
yeah.
gotten? Like
Yeah.
there's so many teams that are so good. Also, yeah, meanwhile in the top side, South Korea gets like Kazakhstan, China, Ukraine, or UK, and then finally they have like a real match against like the probably
4 or
Philippines
5,
Russia
yeah.
winner. Yeah. Like they have practically nothing to worry about by their standards until semis. Meanwhile, in the bottom half, you just got this disgusting gauntlet.
I mean,
But
that's how it goes when you're
Even
the one seed
then,
usually.
yeah, even then, there's like so many good teams this year, man. It's crazy.
The overall level has gone up a lot, and the competition this year is really, really good. I think the middle seeds are all really close. Even a lot of the top seeds are really close. So I'm super looking forward to the rest of OWC. I'm also looking forward to this weekend. You should go check out the schedule on the wiki. It is posted there. So you can go check out the schedule for all of these matches. The first one is going to be Thailand versus New Zealand at 10 UTC tomorrow, Saturday, November 4th. But there's tons of matches all throughout the day on Saturday and Sunday. Be sure to tune in for the ones that you want to see. Thanks everyone for watching. Thank you to Aaron, iFlame, Doomsday, and Demarsh for being on this episode, giving predictions on all the stuff, recapping MGC and the round of 32 from WC. That's it for Full Circle this week. See you all next weekend.